doing that, I opened up some gyms, and that's kind of what got me into commercial real estate. But then the house hacking is what got me into real estate. And then because I was traveling for wakeboarding, I put them up on Airbnb. And then I sold the gyms, started doing more commercial real estate with my partner. In the meantime, like Airbnb was just going in the background. Then I realized like this has been like my highest paying, like if you look at the hourly rate, this has been the best thing. Like why don't I focus more on that? So I started doing a couple more of those and really focusing more like on the wedding and event side. But yeah, happy to go into like, as much detail as you want on any one of those things.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, I'm going to let you take it away. I know this whole endeavor started very early for you, so we're kind of excited to just kind of get an idea. We saw the Facebook post that you had made and the Instagram post that you had made about the house hacking. Fill us in on how that all started.
So yeah, I was grew up wakeboarding in South Carolina on Lake Wiley. That's how I met you guys. So pretty crazy how it comes full circle. But I moved down to Orlando to pursue wakeboarding full time. And so I was renting out these houses on the lake. And then I would like essentially sign, the master lease. And then I would try and rent out each room as much as I could in order to live for free. So I was kind of taking on the risk, signing a long-term lease, and then I would rent out month to month to people. And that gave me wakeboarding like does not pay well. I know people think, oh, it's a professional sport. I mean, it's cool, it's a great lifestyle, but
It's an expensive.
you gotta hustle. Yeah. And so that gave me like that combined with wakeboarding gave me enough money to scrape together a down payment for a house. So in 2000, it was actually 2000, April 2011. So that was one of the things like right place, right time. I mean, I just got super lucky, but bought a house and it was like a 5 bedroom, well, 4 bedrooms and a guest house on a lake, 2 stories with a pool and a hot tub, and a boat dock at like 185,000. It's like you can't replicate those types of things. But I was getting paid to live there at that stage, so that's I was because I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and it talked about some of these things, and so I was making like 1,200 bucks a month. And I lived like I had the master bedroom, I had this private deck and this view of the lake, and four of the roommates, and it was awesome. It was crazy. So that kind of set me up for financial freedom. I think at the time I was wakeboarding, I had the house, and then I had just graduated college, and so I opened up a gym called Nine Round. We opened that up in Orlando, downtown Orlando, kind of, and then. I had started that neighborhood was not nice. So that is one of the reasons it was kind of cheap too. It was not a nice neighborhood, even though the house was nice. So I started looking for another house. At the time, I was like serious with my girlfriend. We were thinking about getting married, and I wanted to buy a place for her that was like a nicer neighborhood. So I found this duplex, and same thing is like, okay, we could live upstairs, and then we could rent out the downstairs, um, long term. And so it ended up like we ended up breaking up, but I bought the house anyways, and what I found was I was renting out downstairs and I would go out of town wakeboarding every weekend in the house and I put it up on Airbnb. And this was a crazy time too. I mean, like I had clothes in the closet, like I had my underwear in the drawers, like we had food in the fridge, like people just didn't care. It was nuts. And I mean it was like, there was that house was on the lake and you did have access to the pool and the hot tub. There was a bunch of things that had going for it. But it was just a totally different time. And so that's when I was like, huh, like this Airbnb thing seems like it has legs. And I was also like in the like so at that time I was wakeboarding, I had the houses and then I was running the gyms too. So I ended up opening a total of 3 gyms between 2013 and 20, I think 16. And then I ended up selling them in 2019, like right before COVID, which was just super lucky. But I don't know, maybe have your list has your audience here heard of Alex Hormozy?
Yes.
Yeah, so I actually got to work with him early back in the day, like in 2017, because that was when he started Gym Launch and we did everything he said and it just worked amazing. So that's what allowed us to grow and then sell. But it was around 20, let's see. So I bought the second house in 2015. And then what we noticed was people were really between 2017 and 2019, I focused pretty much full time on the gyms, like the Airbnbs and the houses were just in the background. And I was wakeboarding at the time. Well, I was wakeboarding until 2017. So like it was wakeboarding and the gyms and the two houses until 2017. And then 2017, it was pretty to 2019, it was pretty much just the gyms, but I had the two, houses that were on Airbnb. Like we were house hacking in the duplex. So there's kind of like a lot of muddled timelines, but the Airbnb really was passive back then. Now it's not. It was really passive. So I had the house that I had moved out of, And then I was living in the duplex. And then I even ended up, I got married in 2017. I met a new girl, my wife now, she's wonderful. Her name's Lisa. But we got married in 2017. So we lived upstairs and then we did short-term rentals downstairs. And then when we would travel, we would sometimes do short-term rentals upstairs too. So what I realized was just like, the gyms took a lot of energy. Obviously, wakeboarding took a lot of energy. Like all the things that I had been doing took so much energy. And I was like, man, these Airbnbs have actually been like pretty close to passive income. So it was about we started looking for a new place for us to live, and then in 2022, I stumbled across a place that I thought would just make a really good Airbnb. And because I had been doing it for so long, people had been messaging me saying, "Hey, can we get married here?" And it's just a residential property. Like we have neighbors that get pissed off. Like, of course, the answer is no. But I was surprised at like how many inquiries I got. And the other thing that's been kind of circling in the back of my head was that when my wife and I got married, we were just like blown away at the price. Like the wedding venues were so expensive, all the catering, everything about a wedding was just so expensive. But it gave me the instead of like it's like that mentality, if you can't beat them, join them. So I've been kind of thinking in my head, like it'd be so nice to have a wedding venue. And so when we were looking for our personal residence, we found a house that was 40, it was 4,000 square feet. We converted the garage to make it about 4,800 square feet, but it was on 3 acres. We got it for like 960, and which is a great price. And then it's on a little small lake, not really boatable. I mean, maybe you could, but not we wouldn't be able to wakeboard on it, probably. Um,
Yes, that's a
and
tip.
yeah. And but what stood out to me was just like, okay, there's a lake behind it. Across the street, like directly across the street is a church, and then catty corner is a gas station, and there's no neighbors on either side. So it's like, who's gonna shut you down for a wedding? And this is again like not a scalable model. It's like not something that I'd recommend. I knew like I wasn't taking on investor money. It was just I was the only one at risk. So it's like I just knew that this was something that I could get away with essentially because nobody was gonna care. So we did, and sure enough, that venue has been performing awesome. So the way that we structure it is that, and I know I said we bought it for 960. We put a lot of money into fixing it up. So between 2016 when I started Airbnb and now, I mean the competition and the level of like guest expectations has just gone through the roof. So like now I've got like full-time property managers both down here and up in Ohio. Have virtual assistants, they have cleaning crews, we have additional handymen, like we have the lawn guys. I mean, it's a full-on hospitality business these days. So it's no joke. But nothing is easy, so it's like there is no easy button, right? If somebody's telling you that, they're lying. If you're gonna make money, you're gonna have to work hard. So anyways, the way that we structure it is we have a 2-night minimum, and then they have to pay an event fee if they want to have an event. So a lot of times, I would say most of the time, most of our revenue comes from overnight stays, but the event fees are kind of just like gravy. Now there is a little bit more cost because the landscaping has to be like perfect, and the brides are getting married, so they want everything perfect. But it's really it's all margin at that stage for the most part. So the yeah, there's a couple interesting things about it, but like I know we were talking about mindset, before this call, and one of my thoughts is like if you're going to close on a property, you're doing the same amount of work. And so you might as well go like as big as you possibly can. So like my first two houses were about 2,600 square feet. This one was almost 5,000 square feet by the time we were done. And it's just like, there's more, economies of scale as you start to get bigger. And so like even in commercial real estate, I mentioned that, I started doing commercial real estate because I met my partner when we were doing our site selection for the gyms for the 9 rounds. And it's like, you can do a project that's a 4 million, $4.5 million that you're creating an additional $1.5 million of value, it'll be worth 6 million by the time you're done. Like to do a development, like like an 8,000 square foot retail development doesn't take that much more time than a 2,500 square foot house, like it is, there's more risk involved for sure. Like you got a lot of risk capital and you have to know a couple more things, but it's like, why not just push the envelope in terms of like the maximum deal size that you feel like you can get away with. And so, yeah, at the time it was scary for me to buy it was almost $1 million house, but the numbers checked out. And the same thing with the property in Ohio. So fast forward to this year, I began looking for really the end of 2023. I began looking for specific like houses that were already doing weddings or could very easily be converted into wedding venues that had the overnight stays. And it's just like the same thing. So we found a 12,000 square foot house out in Ohio. The guy had already been doing wedding venues. and he had already had it listed on Airbnb, so it already had some furniture. Now he was not doing a good job at all. I mean, he had no idea what he was doing. So again, there's a ton of work. But we bought that house for like 1.4 million out in near Cleveland, Ohio, and it's on 18 acres. You know what I mean? It's like 130 bucks a square foot.
Yeah.
But you just compare, you know, the headache that goes into like owning and managing a property. In short-term rentals, specifically look at the headache that goes into managing one property. You're dealing with one guest, right? And so like I know a lot of people that are really obsessed with their door count. Like, oh, you know, how many doors do you have? Like I gotta get all these doors, but like they have these little 3 bed, 4 bedroom houses that you know their margins are not great. So the only way that they can grow by that they can scale their businesses is just adding more doors. But their margins are like very tiny because if you have a 4 bedroom house, like it's the same cost to get somebody to come out to look at the AC when it goes wrong. If your dishwasher goes bad, it's the same cost replacing a dishwasher. Your handyman charges you the same hourly rate when he comes out there, but you just have you have less margin. So it's like a bigger percentage of your expenses to get those things. So my thought was like, let's just go big. Let's go big as I can. And then that way we have more margin in the deal, more economies of scale, and then we're not going to be as affected by those things, especially when it comes to software subscriptions. That's something that you don't really think about, but you get charged per door, right? So like if I have a bunch of 1 bedrooms in a apartment complex, and I've got the Slage key locks for like $15 a month. And then I've got like my properties, my PMS, my property management software for like $30 a month. And then I've got the Price Labs, pricing tool for $15 a month per door. Like this kind of adds up. So I've got like eight bedrooms in one house, what I'm saying, that I'm paying one subscription fee. So that was kind of like my mentality is creating, if I'm going to be dealing with a guest headache, because guests are are headaches. I mean, you guys probably know that's your customer, but like going as big as possible to make it like as essentially as profitable as I possibly could. So that's a lot. I feel like I just word vomited, but that's how I got
That's
into it.
essentially them. Um, so went by.
Yeah, so that's how I got into it. And my plan, and I really like the wedding venue Airbnb component. And so that's my plan. And I'm happy to talk about my plans for the future too, if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's really cool, and it just kind of opens up the kind of the mind on like when people think of investment, they think first and foremost it's like either a business investment of some sort, of low key restaurant, a lot of breweries around here where we're at, you see them popping up left and right, and then individual residential, whether it's all single family homes that people are trying to invest in, but like you said, that margin is so thin when you think about it over the long run. And I really like that point to it is if you actually sit down and write it out and look at it in a bigger scale, it is I go through the same thing with my Airbnb that I have down at Carolina Beach. I have a hard time keeping my mom out of it. You know, she's constantly wanting to go down there. I said, no, I got to get it rented. I got to get it rented. I'm trying to get get this turnover
Yeah,
on it.
the family always wants to use it during like the most expensive, like the best performing times, like the holidays and the weekends. And like, it's like,
Yep.
can't you just go on a Tuesday?
Exactly, exactly. So, but yeah, love to hear a little bit more about that. What your future plans are. That was a great intro on like how you got into it, and it's really eye opening. But what do you have planned for the future? What's your kind of next steps?
So the interesting thing about weddings, well, there's multiple interesting things, but it's very mom and pop. So one kind of anecdote that I can share is that when I signed up for the Wedding Wire and the Knot, are you familiar with that?
Do not.
Okay, when you sign up for an Airbnb, you create an account and then you can add as many listings as you want, right? Because there's obviously people who have more than one listing. But when I signed up for the Wedding Wire and the Knot, which is like the number one advertising platform, you cannot have more than one listing or more than one venue associated with your account. Like you have to create a totally new login information with new email. And I'm like, is there that few people that like have multiple venues? Like that to me just signifies kind of like a blue ocean. So the other thing that's really interesting to me is that a lot of times they're very so they're obviously mom and pop, but also the way that they're ran is like it's a house that people live in. They're like, hey, I got a bunch of property. Why don't I throw some weddings on the weekends, right? And so it's like they're renting out Fridays and Saturdays, and then there's no revenue generation Sunday through Thursday. And so our model is like, let's buy these places that are houses that sleep people overnight, that we can put heads in beds Thursday or Sunday through Thursday and immediately increase the revenue because it's all margin at that stage since your costs are already being covered by your event fees. In addition to that, you can charge more on for your events because now you have an overnight component to it. So I think that there's a lot of money left on the table with those deals. And so, I'm excited to essentially continue this model. So it's like the goal is to make a destination out of every place. Like the wedding venue that we have in Florida, we call it the historic estate. It was built in 1924, literally 100 years ago. Every room is themed after a different decade. So it has like a really historic feel to it. Like the main part of the house is like very 1920s, roaring 20s Mediterranean villa type feel. And then each room is like, the 20s all the way through the 60s. And then we have a bunch of outdoor yard games and amenities and pools and hot tubs. And, it's like the idea is like, hey, we'll get married here, but like we'll bring the whole family. The whole bridal party can stay during the event, but like we'll come out a couple of days early and, we'll just have a good time. Luckily, that place is located like 18 minutes from downtown. So that's a little bit unique. But the one in Ohio, we're only 20 minutes from the Cleveland airport, 35 minutes from the Akron airport. And so trying to get like as far enough away that you're not going to get people upset when you do events or you're actually zoned for it, but close enough to the city center that you can actually get overnight guests for your Airbnb to fill those weekdays. So, I really believe if you make it into a destination, then you can start to get a little bit further outside the city center and people are going to come. And the other thing that's really interesting is that it's hard to get financing. So that actually sucks because when you go to get financing for these deals, like people will want a price for their business, like their wedding business, and then they want a price for their real estate in addition to that. And there's not many lenders that know how to price these things in. So that creates a really big problem, a really big hurdle to solve, but that's also the opportunity. And so when you look at like the wedding business from if you just think about a business perspective, it doesn't actually, it's really hard to get a multiple of the EBITDA, but it's really high cash flow. So you're kind of getting, higher cash flow in the short term, but you're trading off, getting equity in the long term. So like one of the things I learned from selling my gyms is like, is creating equity is really, really important. I sold them for like a 3 times multiple, but I was like, wow, I just got paid. I got paid to do this for the last 6 years. And then today I got paid for the next 3 years up front. Like
Wow.
this is crazy. And so I'm sure everybody here knows about like building equity in the house as it grows. But to have a business equity is like really important. And so my theory is that over time, maybe within 5 to 10 years, I think more institutional money will start chasing this and it'll become more sophisticated. And then there will be lenders who lend on it. And then you will be able to get a multiple of the business revenue in addition to the valuation of the real estate. And so, yeah, I'm trying to essentially get out ahead of this thing, acquire as many as I can, partner with as many people as I can, and create these unique destinations, at different spots around the country.
Yeah. So let me ask you, going back to the lender piece, what where like what kind of loans are you looking at, or have you found that are working for like your type of business plan? Because like you said, I mean, they are hard to come by. I mean, even people who are just trying to get their single family home, their residential property for investment purposes, sometimes run into hurdles too. You know what I mean? But what did what have you found that works for you?
So yeah, we're looking at a place out 45 minutes outside of Orlando right now. And they wanted originally 2.3 for the real estate, and I think they wanted exactly like $1 million for the wedding business. So they're asking like 3.3, which is high. I mean, it's a lot higher than I had paid for anything in the past, and I thought it was too high. But we were trying to just figure out ways to get it done. And so the issue that it created was that you'd have to get like an SBA loan for the business, but then those are locked in for 10 years. You cannot refinance for 10 years, and interest rates are really high. We think they're going to drop, so we didn't want to do that. And then for the house, you'd have to get a DSCR loan. Well, if
Mhm.
you're getting a DSCR loan at 2.3 and you have business debt to service like for the $1 million business, the lenders start to get a little scared. So I think in this situation, what we started doing was just actually going towards it was like they're called a farm. It was like a credit union. And we're still negotiating on this deal because they've dropped the price, but it's like a credit union that lends on like agriculture. So it's like because a lot of these event venues have an agricultural component to them, and that's how they get away with it. So if you're zoned, so that's one thing to think about for everybody listening. Like you, I would not recommend just like buying a house in a neighborhood that's like really big and nice and has a beautiful backyard to throw weddings. Like if you're not zoned, you'll get shut down. But a lot of these places are like out in away from the city center and they're zoned agricultural. A lot of these houses are already zoned agricultural. Now, of course, it depends on your specific municipality and your specific state, but usually you can it's allowed to do events if you have an agricultural zoning. And so because of that, you have to kind of look at a lender that has understands the agricultural component a little bit. But more than likely, I think what we're going to have to do with this deal is they're gonna have to do some seller if they want to get anything for their business. It's probably not going to be the full 3 time multiple that we see it trading at in other industries that are similar. And then they're going to have to hold a note for seller financing, and then we'll take on a DSCR loan for the real estate part of it. And do you guys know what DSCR is?
Yep, we actually had a conversation, I think, probably 2 Wednesdays ago about it.
Yeah, it sucks right now because the interest rate is just so high. And I hear a lot of people, I don't know if you follow Pace Morby, a lot of people are talking about subject to, and a lot of people are talking about creative financing. And I mean, the thing about it's always a trade-off between time and money. So like, yes, you can get these subject to deals, you can get these seller finance deals, you can do it with no money down, it's possible. But like the amount of time you have to spend, you have to create a full business around lead generation in that sense. And to me, it's like, I tried it. Trust me, I dabbled in it, but it's like, this sucks. Nobody wants to do seller financing. Nobody wants to do subject to. They don't trust you. Like, unless you're going to really go like all in on that, for me, it's just worth it almost to pay the extra money. It was like, okay, I'd rather just pay the money, save my time, and in order to get this deal done. And it does affect your ROI metrics, but at least you can go like, especially when it comes to nicer properties. That's the other thing too. Like when you're chasing the top of the market, like the nice stuff, that's the like I would say maybe a little bit less competition, but a little bit more like, margin per deal, or at least if you're looking at direct dollars, more money per deal, even if the margins are the same. Obviously, you work on a bigger scale. 20% is a lot more of $1 million than 20% of it, 300,000. So I don't know. To me, it's been really difficult to find these seller financing deals. So we're at the stage now where it's just like, let's partner with some people, raise some money and just pay, as cheap as we can traditionally just to get the deal done.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's really cool, man. I mean, so it really sounds like you've put a lot of thought and effort into this. I mean, you've taken the time, and it shows through your entire kind of career here. Of putting in the work, and like you said earlier, there's no such thing as easy work. You know what I mean? Like easy money. It's you have to put the work in. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to know what you're looking at, and talk to the right people to get educated on you know where the numbers lie, for example, like looking at it from a numbers standpoint rather than like, I know right now a big thing on your social media has been like location based stuff. And that's been really cool. So, everybody out there, if like, if you're not following Austin Hare right now on Instagram or something like that, go ahead and do that. He's got some really cool tidbits and kind of thinks back to like larger corporation stuff. That's really, really interesting. I've been listening to a lot of it over the past couple weeks here. But, expand a little bit on, like what you kind of did to educate yourself to get to this investment point in your life.
Yeah, I've definitely been a student of it. So, I mentioned that I listened to Rich Dad Poor Dad like back when I think I mentioned that back when I was 19. And I really like kicked me off on a journey to just like consume as much self-development as I can. And so, I mean, real estate really is entrepreneurship, and there's so much overlap and learning from different industries, like as much as you can. So, I mean, I'm always listening to podcasts and audiobooks and just trying to like figure out really how to create a business, because if you don't have a business, then you're a solopreneur and you're just going to spend so much time doing all of these different tasks. So like I have a personal VA, I have VAs that manage the properties. They're kind of like property manager and they post the social media for it. And I'm really trying to create a self-managing company. So recently I joined what's called Strategic Coach. It's Dan Sullivan's thing. He's just been around for decades, but it's been really cool. And so it's just like, how do I create systems that essentially free up my time? So one thing that I've noticed is like scaling and creating passive income are actually like the same thing. The only difference is to create passive income, you get to a certain point and you stop. If you want to scale, you get to a certain point and you keep going. But the idea is like you keep freeing up your time. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to learn and trying to focus on through Strategic Coach, through the Rich Dad Poor Dad. The 4 Hour Work Week was a great book to teach you principles, but like you're not going to actually work 4 hours. Tim is a workaholic, like, but it teaches you like, how to be efficient and how to be productive with your time. And then, yeah, really just like trying to, Alex Hormozy is a guy. I mean, I still follow him. I listen to his books and I listen to his podcasts and I watch his YouTube videos and I follow him on social media. And so he's always got great frameworks for, how to level up and how to scale your business. And so to me, it's like, if I want to either whether I want to create passive income or a scalable business, like I have to learn these principles. I have to do a good job from like the bottom level and keep stacking. So it's like you learn a skill, you learn it really well, you hire somebody to do it, and then you stack, and you keep going from tactical to strategic. Well, I guess you could say strategic. So first, when you learn something, it's strategic, and then you figure out how to do it and systematize it, and then it becomes tactical. and then you level up. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking, but that's kind of been like my mindset.
And that's great stuff, you know. And one of the things that we like to do on this show or on this call is, you know, we always kind of ask everybody like what books they're reading right now. So you just mentioned the 4 Hour Work Week was a great book. Do you have any other recommendations?
Oh man, I got so many. I'm just gonna look. Let me look at
Like
Audible on my phone real quick.
your next top two.
Let me see. There's a bunch. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Two books. Two books that I would. I can't do three.
Great, go for it. Yeah.
All right. So these two are extremely related. So I was mentioning Dan Sullivan. I joined his program. The reason I joined his program was because I read the book Who Not How, and then I read the book 10X is Easier Than 2X. And you familiar with those?
Yep. I actually, I'm in the middle of Who Not How right now.
Okay. So yeah, there's a and then the third one that I would recommend is Buy Back Your Time. And the reason I'm mentioning all three is because they're so similar. So Who Not How is obviously about hire like having the right person to partner with. So it's like, if you don't want to do something yourself, don't do it. Like find somebody to partner with, make the pie bigger. And
Yeah.
then Buy Back Your Time is like the same thing. It's like, okay, what do I not like doing? Like, how can I find somebody to do it? Chances are, if you find somebody to do it for you, like that wants to do it, you're not going to be paying as much as you think you might have to pay, but then now you can focus on the high earning things, higher, you're spending your time at your highest hourly earning potential. And then 10X is easier than 2X. This one was really fascinating. So essentially the concept is like if your goal is to 2X your business, that's everybody's goal. And you've got to essentially there's limitless amounts of options that you can pick from in order to how to 2X your business. You can focus on A, B, C, or D, and you're probably in a competition with a lot of other people they're trying to 2X also. If you try in 10X, there's not very many people thinking about that. And like there's much, much, much fewer options. So it actually takes away decision fatigue. And if you're thinking about 10, so for me, like when I read that book, it's like, okay, I'm focusing a lot of my attention on short-term rentals, but these events pay, like a lot more than what I'm getting for the short-term rental. So it's like that's my 10X, like focusing mostly on event spaces. And then what you do is if you think about your time, on you have 100% of your time. Usually 80% is spent on things that don't really drive the needle that much, and the 20% is spent on things that really drive the needle. So it's like, who can I delegate? And that goes back to the who, not how. Who can I delegate this 80% to so
Right.
that I can spend my now 100% of my time focused on the 20%. And now that 20% becomes your new 100%. And then you find your 80% within that and your 20% within that. So like if you think about it in terms of like what types of clients that you deal with, they would be higher and higher value client, right? So like maybe for your audience, the 100% is like $200,000 houses, right? But I actually spend 20% of I spend 80% of my time on selling $200,000 houses, or I spend 20% of my time on these like four or $500,000. Well, let's focus on these 4 to 500,000. And then it's like, wait, there's a couple guys who have $1 million houses. Well, let's find a team to do that $500,000 house transaction, and I'll focus on these $1 million. Oh, there's a couple people who have a $2 million. You know what I'm saying? And you just kind of keep leveling up, and eventually you have a whole portfolio of like really high performing or high value clients, I should say.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I love the Who Not How. I mean that book. If you haven't started reading yet, you know that's just a great book. I'm gonna just ask one more question in two forms, and I'm gonna open it up to the group to let them ask some questions before we run out of time here. Um, any kind of like one or two pieces of advice that you could provide, one to, let's say, a new agent. You know, we've got some new agents with us on this call, and then two to somebody who's like new into investing, like maybe one or two pieces of advice that you would recommend to them. And then after that we'll let it open it up and let some people ask some questions for you.
Yeah, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not licensed. I'm an investor. But just from what I've read from these books and what I can tell from working with other people, I think hiring a VA, if you haven't done so already, would definitely be my advice. Talking about what we mentioned with Who Not How. I mean, you can fire. Okay, so here's a little hack that I'll share with you guys. I've historically always used people from the Philippines. Now, recently, they've been double dipping. So like you hire them for $5 an hour or something, and it's this great deal, and they're immediately like they get like three or four other jobs. I mean, it's crazy. So I had like a really, really bad experience with the Philippines. I actually hired somebody from Pakistan recently, and it was so much better. They're doing a phenomenally better job. So that's my little tidbit of information is people from Pakistan are actually doing a great job right now.
That's
But yeah, that would be my advice for agents, and kind of like the same advice for investors is like getting somebody to help you to free up your time so you can focus on that type of thing. But I think that like yeah, when it comes to investing, we are always measuring the IRR, like the internal rate of return, and trying to figure out how to get the best IRR. I think that it's important to realize that there is no fully passive investment. It all works on a scale. Like some of the most passive things you can do is you invest in a real estate fund or a real estate syndication, where there's as a limited partner, where there's just a general partner who's like essentially getting the debt and, doing the work and doing the development, all this kind of stuff, where you can invest in like an ETF, right? On S&P 500 or NASDAQ or whatever. Those are like the only really truly passive things, but everything else that happens on a spectrum. And so I try and divide those two things up, and so that I'm measuring my time that I make for my money, or the money that I make for using my time, but then also what kind of return am I getting for my money? And that's hard to do, but like you can't make good decisions without good data. And I think when you start measuring that stuff, you'll be able to get a lot more clearer data, and then you can make the best decisions moving forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's good stuff, man. Good advice. I appreciate that. Austin, thank you so much for all the great information. You are awesome. You've done a great job for yourself, getting to this point. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask?
Austin, were you ever living in a property that you were using as I don't know if I caught the timeline that you were using for an event space?
No, we never did that. We in 2022 we were looking to move at this particular house that was gonna. So our plan was we were gonna spend 6 months in Orlando and then 6 months up in the Carolinas where our families are from. And and so that's what I found this house that'd be good. Looking for a good combination of like a nice house to live in and then also a good Airbnb 6 months out of the year. Well, I loved it. I thought it was awesome. But like I said, there's across from like a gas station and a church. And so I didn't really think about, okay, might not be the best neighborhood, right? But my wife immediately pointed that out. So yeah, we never lived in the event spaces. I mean, I have lived in places where we lived upstairs and we Airbnb downstairs, but not for events.
Yeah. We had a wedding at our house on Monday. So
Oh, on Monday.
my wheels are now turning.
Oh, nice. So what
They
happened?
have been for a while, actually. So it's been fun
So
to hear.
somebody wanted to reach out to you and
Actually,
rent
it was
your
just a team member of ours who was getting married, and so we offered up our house.
Wow.
But it's always I've gotten married at our house. We had some other big events at our house, and I just was wondering if you knew anyone that had, still stayed primary residence, what tax benefits looked like, things like that. So just
Mm,
curious.
okay. Yeah, sorry, I can't be more help on that.
Yeah, the tax side of a lot of these things is really interesting too. Especially with a property that you own is one of the things that we kind of learned about down at the convention down at EXP down in Miami, with like trying to do larger events for whether it's your team or a group of people or whatnot, and actually looking up what value of your own house would be to rent it out as a open commercial space for a little bit, and then hosting just a small event or whatever. I know Kyle Whistle said that he would do his photo shoots at his house and he would actually rent out his house for the tax consideration, of it all, and those are really interesting pieces to it. I don't know what the taxes look like for you, but if there's anything you want to, talk about on that.
Yeah, sure. You can do up to, I think it's 14 days. You can rent your house for up to 14 days tax free. So like you don't have to pay any income tax if you stay under that mark. So that doesn't really apply to me because we're doing so much more. But the other thing that we do is a cost segregation. And so that's been really helpful too. Like my wife has a W-2 job. And so over the past couple of years, we've pretty much gotten back all of her taxes that she's paid. But cost segregation is essentially where you just depreciate the value of the house the first year that you get it, or sorry, upfront. Like we chose to spread that out over a couple years. So like with the house that we bought, the wedding venue that we bought in Orlando, we depreciated like 500 grand of it. We spread it out over 4 years. So we had like $100,000 of write-offs that we could deduct from the income. And then we did another one. We have a commercial building my partner and I bought out in Missouri. And same thing, like we depreciated that back in 2020 and we had, a couple years of write-off. So you can definitely significantly lower your taxable income, and especially if your spouse has a W-2 job. But at some point, if you ever sell it, like, now you've written off whatever 500,000 as a loss. So like your capital gains are going to be higher at that point. Now we're not really planning on selling these for a long time, so we'll kind of deal with that when we get there. But that's the trade-off that you make.
Gotcha. Yeah, great info.
And you have to be a full-time real estate, in order to do a cost segregation.
Right, right. Who do you have a recommendation for cost segregation?
Sure. Yeah, give me 1 second.
I need one done for this year. We're closing on a property in 3 weeks. And I have to get it up for rent before Christmas. You're
Yeah.
such a timely speaker today.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, this is. You want me to just drop it in the chat?
That'd be
Yeah, if
perfect.
you would, please.
Thanks, friend.
Yeah. This is a group called Source Advisors. That they did a great job.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anybody before we close out the meeting for today? Awesome. Well, Austin, hey, thank you so much for being here today, man. It's a lot of great info. We want to congratulate you on your journey thus far, and hope for the best for you moving forward. And look forward to all your upcoming videos and stuff on Instagram and Facebook to kind of see where you're at, and hopefully we can get you back on here in the future for another session.
Yeah, man, it'd be my pleasure. And I see you guys are recording. Yeah, if it's okay, I'd love to post some stuff on social media.
Absolutely. I'll send you the YouTube link. It's live streaming too, so it'll be there and buffered and finished out here in a few minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks very much.
Clips. All right, guys. Hey, thanks so much. This was a really fun morning. I appreciate you guys.
Yep. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Have a great day.